Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, baby. How y'all doing? How y'all been? Now, before I even enter this thing here, this rapport monologue that I'm about to come and do here today, y'all are gonna just leave my lines alone. Yeah, because I wanted to come on here and do like a sleek bun for the look, but I decided I'm not in the mood again, so I just did like some quick whatevers. These are like half flat twists, half what, but leave me alone. Anyway guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are doing well. I hope you're doing good today. And today we are back at it again with another looks and crooks video. And the crowd goes wild. The crowd went wild. So I'm actually going to do it how like I did my other videos, where I just like do my eye and then I do my face in another video, because I find it like so much easier to just divide the time. Pitch perfect, Ariana, is that you? Yeah, it is. Anyway, so for today's case, we're actually going to be talking about a man who literally gave up everything, and I thought it was like so chic to do it at this time because it's like Black History Month or whatever, and I feel like out of like all the Black liberators etc, and I'm not coming at any of your Black liberators, do you hear me? But I feel like this man really is one of the people I really look up to, etc, etc, etc. Now, he was obviously done dirty being a person in Africa fighting for human rights, God forbid. And I just want to talk about that today because I feel like not enough of you know. And I feel like you gotta know what happened to poor Mr. Kenneth Matiba. Now, right, let's get right into this video. Now, who is Mr. Kenneth Matiba? You might ask me. Mr. Kenneth Matiba was actually born on the 1st of June in 1932 in colonial Kenya. Now, let me just say one thing about colonial Kenya. Times were tough. Times were tough. For the Black people, of course, because the white people were just having a blast of a time up in that bitch. You know what I mean? Being born during colonial Kenya, it was really hard for you to get an education and to even get up or make something of yourself other than becoming a farmer, etc. Because the white people obviously made it very hard. It was even more shocking when Mr. Kenneth Matiba was able to go to school, and not only go to school, but he went to school and he actually graduated top of his class. He was really good at what he did. I think he was an economist because many articles said different things, but he graduated top of his class as an economist. We're gonna go with that. So to do this during colonial Kenya was a bit of a, that's a shining star right there, that's a Black king right there. And it proved to be true because as soon as he graduated, he started really making a name for himself. He wanted to actually get into politics to help change Kenya from the inside out. You know what I mean? It was a bit tough to get into politics. He got into politics when he was 31 as the first indigenous African permanent secretary for education during colonialism. So he was red. For you to know that you're being put as head of education in colonial Kenya when the colonialists were the ones who wanted to be doing all the education, that means you had bodied the exam. You bodied it. If I slap you now, what will they tell your parents? Anyway, he worked his way up. He really worked, and he was appointed the permanent secretary for commerce under Mwai Kibaki. Like I said, he was absolutely brilliant when it came to economics. Mr. Matiba was actually awarded this position in 1963. However, he was awarded this position in May, and in December of that year, Kenya gained its independence. So there was a bit of instability, but not for Mr. Matiba. Kenneth Matiba looked at this and he saw an opportunity to make Kenya great. However, it wouldn't be this time that he would be able to, you know, get into the politics, because as soon as like Kenya got independence, literally the next day we got a new president very quickly, very fast. Everything happened so quickly. We got our first dictator, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, and he didn't really stand for anybody coming for his position of power. You know how these old African leaders like to be, even these current ones, they don't like when anybody is trying to take their positions of power. And so Mr. Kenneth Matiba just decided he's going to chezea chini ya woyes. He's going to just cut out your story. He's going to like relax. He's just gonna calm down and see how things go. And for the meantime, he was just going to try and rally up supporters etc. So by the time it's time to get what he needs to get, he has the support and he's able to strike as a hot iron, as hot as an iron gets. What Mr. Kenneth Matiba wanted, he wanted to establish Kenya as a country with more than a one-party rule. One-party rule is when only one party can present people to be elected. So you have options to choose, but you can only choose from one party, if I'm trying to make sense. And Mr. Kenneth Matiba really didn't understand, like, why did we come from colonialism where we had no choice, and then we moved to a place where we basically had no choice? Imagine if you only had one democratic, like, the only party allowed is the Democrats. No conservatives, no nothing, just Democrats. Full stop. Go and tell your parents if you don't like it. If you don't like it, you can get out of the country. And he didn't understand why this was. So because he knew that Mr. Jomo Kenyatta would have offed him if he came out to say anything, he just bided his time, as I'm saying. He got supporters, etc. And one of the supporters he actually rallied together was the person who he was working under at the time, Mr. Mwai Kibaki. He was the minister for commerce during that time, and him and Mr. Mwai Kibaki they were working undercover. They were undercover, because if they got discovered, like I'm saying, it would have been raps on them and their family. And that's how these old dictators used to work. It was raps on not only you, but you, your families, and your extended families, peoples. Everybody would have just been off. An opportunity finally opened up, and I'm not saying it that his death was a good thing, but an opportunity finally opened itself up when Mzee Jomo Kenyatta actually died. And he died in 1978. And this is when now Mr. Matiba really thought, it's our moment. It's our time to come out. It's our time to shine. However, woe was him and woe was he, because another dictator took over. And this one was even, if you thought Mzee Jomo Kenyatta was bad, Mr. Joseph Arap Moi was even worse. Now, Joseph Arap Moi was the second president of Kenya, and his rule was terrible. Like, my parents tell me about his rule all the time, and I'm just like, Jesus. He had undercover cops. He had CID in local pubs, like real Adolf Hitler shit. You couldn't say anything bad about him or the government. He would call grown men. This man would call grown men into his office and lash them. Grown men with grown families with grown bills to pay. He would call them into his office when they've done something he doesn't like, and he would lash them like babies. And from what I've discussed, you don't want to get on the wrong side of Joseph Arap Moi. So what happened was Mr. Kenneth Matiba decided to continue just laying low for the time, but he did get a better position under the administration of Joseph Arap Moi. And from then now he started to, you know, try and recruit more people, because you know the thing is, right, there's always someone who thinks like you. You just have to sometimes be the person to seek them out. It's just like friends. You sometimes just have to go out and look for the people who you're gonna get along with. By this time, as Mr. Kenneth Matiba has seen Joseph Arap Moi is off the goddamn rails, he decides the time is now. There's never a better time to seek justice and seek goodness as now. He saw Kenya was getting older and older, and the more he allows for this kind of thing to continue, we're now in our second presidency. It's been years after independence, and we still don't have multi-parties. So he decides, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna start campaigning. He campaigns, and he's getting people on his side. He's going around. Mind you, all this time he's still a member of the government. Not that he's not a member of Joseph Arap Moi's government, but he now starts campaigning, going all around the country, telling people about democracy and what his dreams are for Kenya, to the point where people started to really like him. He became known as the people's man. That's what they used to call him. They used to call him the people's man. And people really liked him, and this really turned off Joseph Arap Moi. And if you're not Kenyan, one very big issue with Joseph Arap Moi was the fact that he had, like, not to say a small ego, but he really didn't like when you didn't like him. Like, let me say that, because, and that's like a very strong characteristic of all these dictators. I think they have childhood trauma and abandonment issues, because you can't just, the fact that people don't like you and you decide everyone has to now, that doesn't love you and suck your dick has to die, that in itself, you need therapy. You need to see a therapist, my G. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Anyway, Kenneth Matiba now decides this is his time for Kenya. He doesn't care if he gets lashed, if he gets killed, if he gets what. He said, you know what, me, I have my people, and me and my people, we know what we want. However, this is why we are here today, because clearly him and his people didn't know what they wanted. Because this story of Kenneth Matiba is one riddled with continual and perpetual betrayal. And the thing is, this kind of betrayal is, I dare say, what eventually led to his death. Now, it was already a phenomenon that Mr. Kenneth Matiba was so well liked among the people, because if you know one thing about Kenya, you know that Kenya is very tribalist. So for people to like one man, regardless of his tribe or his race or whatever, it means that this man really was preaching a message. And naturally, people around him got jealous, and a lot of them became sellouts, because it's like, okay, one, we are jealous. Two, not only are we jealous, we also want quick money. And Mr. Kenneth Matiba didn't know that Mwai was in cahoots with his people, and they were now trying to organize the way they're gonna catch him like a fat rat on the highway. Naturally, as he was doing all his rallies, etc., he was hiding, and the only people who knew his location were his friends. So, or the people that he was traveling with, etc., and the people who he thought wanted the same things as him. He had spent years and years vetting these people, and he trusted them with everything he had, which includes his life. This wasn't his mistake. Naturally, you want to trust the people around you. Like, it's not like this is something very unheard of. However, he did let his guard down, and I'm not blaming him, but what I'm saying is, when you're in this kind of dangerous game, like, just don't trust anybody, especially when you have such a big thing riding on it. I would really advise you not to trust anybody. So while they're traveling, Mr. Kenneth Matiba actually got arrested, and this was at Mwai's behest. Mwai found out from one of his people where Kenneth Matiba would be at the exact moment when he wanted to to arrest him, and he sent people there. And this was in 1990. He was imprisoned at Kamiti prison. Now, I'ma just stop this entire video. When I mention Kamiti prison, you should already know it's giving death. If you know nothing about Kenyan prisons, know this and know peace. Kamiti is like the worst place you can be sent. When they tell you, it's either Kamiti or a mental asylum, forgive me. When they tell you you're going to Kamiti, you're done. You are done. You are done. There's nothing else you can do with this life. You are done. Anyone who actually goes to Kamiti, most of them never come out. And if they do come out, they usually come out with like one issue of brain damage or the other. Or if they come out normal, they're just like physically normal. Mentally, they're never really the same. Kamiti is really that bad bitch. Like, when it comes to prisons and etc., if a judge says you are going to Kamiti, just forget about it. Forget about it. He's jailed without trial, so already he has no rights. The fact that they've just decided to throw him in prison, and Mr. Jomo Kenyatta could actually do that. He could just wake up today and decide, yeah, you're going to prison. And that was a very big characteristic of his, apart from beating people's fathers. I'll never get over it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And when now Mr. Kenneth Matiba arrives at that jail cell, when he now arrives, jail cell. I almost forgot to say this, that the prison is actually also known to castrate men. Like, they actually actively castrate men. Allegedly. These are just stories I saw as I was researching. Apparently, a lot of the people at the prison have reported that they don't like castrate you physically, but they like chemically castrate you, which is when they just make sure that your dick doesn't work ever again. Like, they throw rocks on it and stuff. And I'm so sorry, like, I just had to include that. I don't know if it's true, so don't come at me and say lawsuit this, lawsuit that, lawsuit what. I've said allegedly. I've said allegedly. That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. Bitch. So anyway, back to the story. So now Mr. Kenneth Matiba is dropped there without trial, without anything. Nobody's standing up for him, because, like I said, Kenya was still very early. In so much as, yeah, we had developed, it was still very much so an early state. So we hadn't yet like gotten fundamental human rights and ways to like protect the fundamental human rights. He was detained from 1990, and he was actually officially released in 1991. During the time that he was in prison, it is alleged that Mr. Kenneth Matiba went through unspeakable things. He was tortured so much that he actually suffered from a stroke, and they refused to give him any medication. The physicians at the hospital kept on begging the people actually torturing him. They were like, please take this man to hospital, he's gonna die, he's gonna die. But the people torturing him did not listen. He was released a week after the stroke though, but by this time he was released, it was too late to like restore his condition. And actually during a court case later on in his life, it was said by his personal physician that had they actually released him as soon as, you know, he underwent the stroke, he might have been able to like be helped, and if he could have actually been saved. But because they didn't care and they just wanted to hurt him, because God forbid people like you more than they like the president, I don't know. I don't even know what to say from there, because that's just despicable. That's just nasty. It's too much. When he was released from the prison, like I'm saying, in 1991, a week after the stroke, he was rushed to hospital, and like I'm saying, nothing could be done. His brain was actually swelling, and if you know something about, there's a point where your brain can swell until you die. So he suffered from brain damage, and since that day he was never the same. He was a very brilliant scholar. After that, he couldn't really read that well. He suffered with shakes on his hands. He couldn't like hold attention for very long, and he had really bad headaches. And according to the hospital records, this was all from blunt force trauma. So they probably like bludgeoned him in the head, probably, allegedly. They probably would have had to bludgeon him in the head with something like not sharp, something that would cause your, like the arteries in your brain to rupture, which would then cause your brain to swell. I think that's what happens. I'm gonna research that. He was actually confined to a wheelchair, so he couldn't really go around the rallies, etc. He couldn't do what he used to do, and a lot of, during that time, there wasn't any social media or anything like that. People really needed to physically be able to see you, so that they could want to vote for you, and the media was largely controlled by the government. So if the government is the one that's already put him in this kind of position, do you see what I mean when I say it's not gonna be the same government that's gonna come and try help you? It's just not gonna be them. It's not gonna be them. And Mwai was pretty pleased with himself, I'm guessing, because his aim was to teach Kenneth Matiba his place, which I guess he did. He didn't want Kenneth Matiba up and about threatening to, you know, take power from him and revolutionize Kenya and do all these things and keep Mwai out of the loop. So I'm guessing Mwai was happy with himself. I mean, he got what he achieve, like he got what he wanted to achieve. Now as the years went by, his health really became much worse, and he couldn't really seek medical attention in Kenya, so he had to actually go abroad. And he had the shmoney, if I forgot to mention. Like I said, it took time for him to get into politics, as I said earlier, so he took some time and he built himself up, like, you know, a little business or whatever. But it wasn't little, because if that business can take you to London for medical assistance, there ain't nothing small about that. So he went to London to have his head looked at, because I told you he took a lot of the suffering to his head, and it was actually found there, or it was allegedly found there, according to some articles I saw, that Mr. Kenneth Matiba was injected with mercury. Now, if you don't know one thing about mercury, our ancestors used to use mercury, and it used to kill them off faster than the plague, because mercury is not supposed to be injected, or even come into contact with the with bodies, like with a human body. Over the years, mercury poisoning can actually cause abnormalities in the brain. It can also cause a person to just basically die in the end. Yeah. And this is a report that allegedly a doctor in London, you know, came out with. So you obviously know there was no tampering or anything like that, like of any of these kind of evidences, because, you know, these African hospitals, sometimes when it's a big case like this, you can't trust them. You really can't trust them, because they'll just come out and say, oh my god, no, he's okay, don't worry about it, he's great. He wasn't great. Although the story of mercury is like an alleged thing, the theory of this mercury poisoning is heavily supported by three theories, let's say. For one, Kenneth Matiba's health deterioration was very fast, and it's very much so in line with mercury poisoning. When you do get mercury poisoning, something that really happens to you is you like don't understand what's happening very quickly. Like, you could have been the brightest student, the baddest bitch, and very quickly you don't understand what's going on. And that's something that really happened to Kenneth Matiba. And it was very visible for him, because he was a great scholar. He was really good at what he did. So the decline was very visible. It was very easy to see that, hey, something isn't adding up. Something isn't going well, and we need to get to the bottom of it. Now, on top of that, The second theory that really supports this mercury poisoning theory is that Kenneth Matiba actually showed classic signs of mercury poisoning. He constantly needed help from that point on, and he was a very like able-bodied person, so he had serious deterioration in his mobility for one, and two, he also had serious impairment of speech after the whole being arrested illegally situation. He had impairment of speech, and he also really suffered from muscle weakness. He used to be a very strong man, but after that whole, you know, being arrested, etc., he wasn't that strong again. He couldn't really stand up by himself, hence the wheelchair. He was always at home. He couldn't go out again, and he just really greatly seemed like he was poisoned by mercury, and mercury in specific, because the effects of mercury, injected mercury on the body, are very, very specific, and he seemed to be showing all of them over the years. So I'm not the whistle, but I am the blower. I'm not the whistle, but I am the blower. Do with that what you want. Now, life after imprisonment really changed for Kenneth Matiba. He continued to try to fight for rights in Kenya, and he actually teamed up with the, you know, the third president of Kenya, but by the time they teamed up together, he was really not the third president of Kenya. He was just, you know, a minister, and his name is Mwai Kibaki, the guy who was Kenneth Matiba's boss before. And when they teamed up together, they had made a pact, and they said that, you know what, in a few years we're gonna quit our jobs and in government, because he was still in government, we're gonna quit our jobs in government so that we can start our own party and we can move on together and we can do things together. But Mr. Kenneth Matiba in 1998 actually quit his job only for Moi to double cross him. So yet another friend double crosses him, only for Mr. Mwai Kibaki to double cross him and decide, actually no, I don't want to do that, I want to do something else. And Moi stayed in government, and Mwai stayed in government, and this really paved Mwai Kibaki's way to becoming the next president of Kenya. And he had to pay the price of double crossing Kenneth Matiba, someone who they had been friends for like years, guys. Years. When I say years, I mean years. And yeah, he double crossed him, and in a few years Mr. Mwai Kibaki became the third president of the Republic of Kenya, and Mr. Kenneth Matiba just remained in his wheelchair, betrayed, suffering, alone. Not only was he smart, he made it up in Kenya during a time when it was like almost near impossible to make it up. He made it up, and it was just the fact that he trusted the wrong people. It was just that, the fact that he trusted the wrong people with his location, with what he was doing, with his identity, with his plans. That's what literally made him suffer. That's why he ended up the way he ended up, and it's not his fault, honestly. Even me, I want to believe there's good people in this world, but I feel like when the story of him really tells me that I need to watch myself, and I need to watch my back, and I need to watch who I become friends with, because my parents always told me this, that your friends really determine like a lot with regards to who you'll become and what your choices will be, etc. And I always used to think that's bullshit, but when I read this story, I said, wow, imagine your friends have robbed you of everything, and now they're the same politicians. But anyway, moving on. Later in his life, Matiba was actually compensated by the courts of Kenya. So he filed a lawsuit for 12 billion, but he was only given 1 billion because Kenya. Need I say more? And he really actually needed the 1 billion because he was actually going broke by this point, following from his medical bills. Like, his medical bills were becoming too much because he couldn't get treated in Kenya, so he constantly had to be going to Canada and America and India and all these places to get treated. So he actually needed to be compensated by the government for everything he had done, for being a freedom fighter, for one. Anyway, guys, yeah, I went off camera to quickly like do these eyes because the eyesight was not given the eyesight. Anyway, yeah, I'm guessing that's it for today. I still have to stick these on. It's really giving the alien look that I was trying to go for. And yeah, I'm quite happy with the look, actually. I'm gonna stick these on 1 second. But yeah, that is today's case. Okay, let me blow this for like a quick good 2 minutes. I really fought with these eyelashes, and yeah, this is basically it. Yeah, we are at the end of our video. what can I say? Thank you so much for coming to this video. I will finish the rest of my face in the next video, so tune into that if you'd like to watch that. And yeah, we'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.